quite a shy person. I never get to tell people about my children in particular. I like to tell people about the work I do. So I thought it was a personal conversation we were having. Least did I know that he was going to share it with you. But good morning. My name is Thabang Charlotte Mampane. I work for the National Lotteries Board, and I was introduced as the Chief Executive Officer of that organization. I've been with them for just under 2 years now, and as Nicholas explained, I spent the better part of my life at the South African Broadcasting Corporation in different areas, but I would have worked for the regulator, which used to be the IBA ICASA now. I've worked for Telkom before, and I've worked for the Human Sciences Research Council. Just wanted to give you that background to say to you I've been around and working towards retirement. And I must say, I think I'm in good company. All of you are wonderful people. You are doing a great job because you're coming in where our government can necessarily not fulfill some of those obligations. Continue with your good work, and let's see how all of us can hold hands to make a difference to those people who sleep without food, to those people who could be experiencing problems and do not have access to resources, to all of you who have brilliant projects that you would like to conceptualize, but then you don't know how to go about. I hope I'll be able to give you some light into what we do at the National Lotteries Board. Some faces are familiar. You know, I was praying over this early in the morning that when I get here, I hope nobody will ask me about their projects that's in the system and are not being paid. And guess what? Just when I looked on my right-hand side, these people were already pointing at me that, yeah, she's the one. I'm really honored, and the National Lotteries Board is honored to be given this important platform by Saiba. Nicholas went out to speak to you today on issues around NPOs, especially in the NLB context. You are the most important people that we are serving at the National Lotteries Board. So we try very hard to make sure that we have a good relationship with you. But I'm happy that Saiba invited us today to come and be part of this important gathering. I will be taking you around 4 main areas today. Firstly, it will be on the role of the National Lotteries Board. It will be on accessing NLB funding. It will be on the proposed funding policy and you know, what we think will alleviate all the other challenges that we've been experiencing, and that is on differentiated grants. Before I go into the detail though, I must mention that in the past year especially, we at the NLB took on several self-assessment activities. You know how it is like with new brooms. You always want to make sure that you sweep cleaner. So we got in there and wanted to know about the funding policy and whether, you know, if people were boasting that they would have distributed 17 billion rands to South African since the NLB started operating, whether there would have been any impact study conducted to find out whether the funds that were distributed alleviated poverty or really helped us to live up to our vision, which is to be a catalyst for social upliftment. It has become clear, though, to us that there's a need for continued education on processes, laws, and even education on what constitutes fraud in business. Just as organizations like the NLB focus on continuous improvement, I think it is also important for NPOs to do the same thing. And I have no doubt that with what has been organized here, the objective is for you to keep abreast with developments in terms of what funding organizations like ours are doing. All of you know that our funding is application-based. That's number one. We get a lot of requests, and serious ones, that there's a disaster. You know, this is what happened. A house or a shack burned down. or there's been many other things that happened in the community. We would like to help, but unfortunately, because we're governed by an act of parliament, we have to follow what is in the regulations. And what is in the regulations is that we fund NGOs, NPOs, I'll take you through all the information. But we just do not fund you. You have to apply for funding in good time. So the challenge for us has been that if we are talking about helping those who are in distress or those whose lives would like to change, then how do they plan for the disasters and all these other things? It meant that we should also be proactive and look at what we could do to change that whole arrangement. I'll take you through the information because what has happened is that there's been amendments to legislation, and we're hoping that in the third quarter of this year, we'll be implementing a new act, and hence I will talk to you about the funding policy and the new opportunities that are coming out of that. Thank you. Can I start with my presentation, if you allow me? I'm not good at presenting, but I'm good at talking, so please listen carefully. Okay, thank you. I must change the slide with this. Can I test first? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I indicated to you already that we were founded through an act of parliament, which is the Lotteries Act number 57 of 1997. Now, as the National Lotteries Board, we have a dual mandate. Firstly, we are a regulator. How I explain this to people, because most people believe that we're getting money from the fiscus, from the government. No, that is not true. It only happened when the NLB was established. Okay? So what happens is the Act empowers the regulator to regulate the national lottery operator. And it's not the national lottery operator only. There are societal lotteries. We issue licenses for that. There are sports stakes. There are many other lottery activities that are mentioned in the Act that we regulate. But let me talk to you about the national operator, because that's the most important one. Sorry, for a long time I haven't been using microphones, so please pardon me if there are these noises. So what is happening is that the national operator currently is Gidani. It is the second national operator since the establishment or the passing of that legislation. The first one was Utingo, that Tata Machans, you remember. Then came Gidani, which is one day is one day. The board of the lottery is in the process of looking at licensing the third operator, okay? And the third operator should start operating by May, June 2015. So it's quite a long and tedious process that the board is busy with currently. So from the activities of the regulator, we advise the Minister of Trade and Industry on who to give a license to. It's a whole bidding process, that has to be adjudicated upon by certain people, and hence we are at a point where we finalize in that process. So in terms of the current license agreement, I don't know what the arrangement was with Utingo, I wasn't there. But in terms of the current agreement with Gidani, for every ticket, lottery ticket that you buy, 34% goes to the National Lotteries Board, okay? So that 34% translates into anything between 1.6 to 2 billion rands. That is transparency. This is your organization. You have to know what happens to the money. Am I right? Yeah. So besides that, besides the 34% that you are receiving, from the additional activities that the operator, which is Gidani, gets involved with, if they generate revenue through any lottery activity, we're getting 34% of that. And as the regulator, we are the ones who approve any additional activities that they have to go into. So be careful. There is the Lotteries Board and there's the National Gambling Board. And, well, there are challenges in the sense that there are areas where, you know, there tends to be some ambiguity, but we're dealing with those issues. They are not that difficult to deal with. So, while still on the regulatory responsibility of the National Lotteries Board, because there's one national lottery operator, okay, that gives us 34%, which we end up distributing to all of you. We guard that space jealously. We are fighting very hard with people who become creative and start their own mini lottery activities without applying. And we have a lot of those. We have a lot of illegal lotteries in the country. But we're working on dealing with them, because unless we leave that to continue, then the 34% that gives us 1.6 billion will necessarily reduce. The second mandate has to do with us being the trustee of NLDTF, and in the presentation, I'll take you through that. The DTI, our relationship as the National Lotteries Board with the DTI is that that's the department we report to, and even with the process of licensing the lottery operator, we take recommendations to the Minister of Trade and Industry. He's the one who then gets into contracting with whoever the operator will be. I spoke about Gidani, that they are currently the national operator, and in the presentation, I'll take you through our distributing agency and the wonderful work they could do for all of you. Now, in terms of NLDTF legislative priority, we are currently operating under the 2010 NLB regulations. I told you that there's been an amendment to legislation. We're in the process of proposing new regulations. But for now, the priorities for distributing the funds must contribute to the developmental needs, enhancement of social and moral responsibility, and economic viability of programs designed to advance rural, underprivileged, and poor communities. There's no doubt that we're focusing very much on poverty alleviation. We'd like to consider government strategies. We've been looking at the NDP and whether there's something we can extract from it. And even from the SONA yesterday night, I think there are many areas where we thought we, necessarily would look at how we do our work. The issue around sports, for instance, was mentioned yesterday as how that can bring people, South Africans, together and build a one strong nation. There was an issue around unemployment for the youth, which we would have considered already, and just the first one of poverty alleviation. I think it's what is worrying each and every one of us sitting here today. We also have a mandate, as per the regulations, that we should distribute 5% of that 1.6 billion to every province. I will tell you how we do that, and that in addition to the 5%, we must make sure that poor, rural, and disadvantaged areas also benefit. That vulnerable groups like children, women, and the disabled are really given priority. To this end, we last year concentrated a lot under our charity sectors in funding ECDs. And we didn't just call for applications or say it's ECDs, this has happened. We literally went to every province and saw close to 50% of those ECDs and made sure that they are operational, because when the National Statistics Department was doing their work before the previous election or at the last census, they would have picked up that there's a challenge in that area. That children in certain areas of the country were not having a good foundation, and necessarily they started school without having the necessary ability to understand what was happening at school, and that there was a need to just concentrate on the ECDs and see how we empowered people. So we try to partner, much as we know that that's the Department of Social Development, or it would have been any other governmental department, basic learning, basic education. We got in and helped to empower, especially those ECDs in very rural communities. And it wasn't about giving them money to buy toys only. We fund everything from infrastructure to all the other tools that you require. It all depends on how you put together your proposal or your application for funding. Okay, I spoke to you about that earlier on, and out of that 2 billion, this is how it gets distributed. Firstly, I said we have distributing agency. The charities one is the one that I've just been telling you about, that it's housing ECD, many other things that I will come to in the next slide. And then we have arts, culture, and national heritage that gets allocated 28% from the amount that you see there above. We have sports and recreation. It gets distributed 22% of that budget. And we have what is referred to as miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is this one that has been open, and it has been for multi-purpose reasons, where you can apply any time of the year without worrying about not having waited for a call or not having been given money properly. Sorry, I'm really battling with the presentation. I wish I could use the computer. Sorry, please pardon me for this. I think I went far ahead. Sorry, made the thing a bit boring. I was here and I was trying to talk to you about miscellaneous purpose. It's only 5% of the 5 billion that gets allocated to that, and that's the fund where you can apply throughout the year, where you don't have to wait for a call. But for the others, for charities, for arts, for sports, we can't just give you money. You have to wait for us to go public and tell you that we're going out on a call so that you can start to apply for funding. Now let's look at who's eligible for applying. I told you that we are into non-profit organizations, non-governmental organizations, public trusts, Section 22 companies, municipalities. I'm not sure about parastatals, but when I thought about some of the entities we have funded, like the Heritage Council, I thought maybe that's the reason you have parastatals there. And we have also been funding institutions of higher learning, further education and training institutions, universities, and universities of technology, public schools, museums, libraries, national parks and institutions, which were established through an Act of Parliament, provincial academies, sports, national sports federations, affiliates to national sports federations, sports bodies, and recreational clubs. All these people are the ones who have been funded out of the 18 billion now that I told you about earlier on. The initiatives within the NLB mandate in terms of arts, culture, and natural heritage sector, we always make sure that we support initiatives of projects that have to do with theater, productions, music, dance, visual arts, literature, conservation of heritage and indigenous knowledge systems, environment, waste management, and cleanup operations. And for charities, it's social welfare, it's early childhood development, and adult literacy. I see that for charities, and I'll ask my colleague what happened. See, they were too shy to tell you that we also fund SPCA. Okay. For sports and recreation center, we have talent identification, participation in national and international recognized events, infrastructure development, and admin, coaching skills, and development. So, when you read or you go into our website, and I pity those who are my age, those who are 56 and above, because we were born after technology, so it gives us problems at times. But if you go into our website, you're able to get every information that you need to know about the National Lotteries Board and its funding activities. We also have all our annual reports, all the statements or press releases. So please, as a partner, as one of the important stakeholders, make it a habit to just go into that website, you know, and interact with us. You can send questions. You can also come through to Pretoria and have tea with us and just get talking about what you'd like to do, how you'd like to change lives in your community. So, many people actually apply for funding. Last year only, after we had the arts call, so the combination of sports, arts, and charities, we had more than 7,000 applications. Out of those 7,000 applications, there was a request for funding which was almost something around a big figure that we cannot dream of. The total request was something standing at 7 billion, which we do not have. What you must understand that the cake is just this small. So there is competition for it. And because there is competition, when you apply, you know, it takes time for people to sit down and just conceptualize an idea based on what they are experiencing, based on what they are seeing. Make sure that you do a proper job. You don't want your application to be rejected even before it can be taken for adjudication. What I didn't tell you is that that Lotteries Act says there are all those distributing agencies that I indicated to you. Those distributing agencies are actually run by a panel of 7 people. Those people come to the NLB from time to time to adjudicate over your projects. We are not the ones who adjudicate over the projects. We make sure that we do all the administration, we go out on a call, we prepare the applications for adjudication, but there's a special panel that adjudicates and allocates money for your projects. So thereafter, they give the information to us, and we just process the payments. We do not just process the payments, though. We do into a whole verification process. And based on what Nicholas has just said to you, the area that concerns finance, that concerns financial statements, that concerns accountants that you use, it's a highly problematic area. Before we pay, we subject your projects to a thorough verification process. And that's where we pick up that you don't use financial experts, or they call accounting officers, who are qualified. Some of them are blacklisted, and there are a lot of problems with others. I hope Nicholas, throughout the session, will actually empower you with information on how to actually choose proper accounting officers who will necessarily pass the test when we subject your projects to a verification process. So we have that form which is prescribed as well. You know, we're working, you know how government and government things are. We work within the prescripts of the law, and everything is prescribed. So our application forms are prescribed as well. And you know, make sure that these documents that are stated here, and I saw that there's a nice handout for you, make sure that whenever you submit your application, most people get taken away by the business plan because that's where their passion lies. Make sure that this that appears here you check and you check thoroughly. That the application form is properly filled in, that you have the registration certificate and there's proof of affiliation, there's signed and dated constitution and founding documents. And if you happen to have a challenge by not knowing how to do these things, please contact our offices. We have since gone into making arrangements and signing MOUs with different institutions that can help you when you have a problem with putting together a constitution or an MOU, so we can help you to do these things. And I have no doubt that this conference here, hence the need for you to speak with one voice, for you to have one representation, because you have to have somewhere or something that can serve as a point of reference for you. At times you all do not have time to go to the National Lotteries Board. So use associations like these ones to make sure that you comply in terms of this. And there's additional supporting information that you need to submit. It is your ID documents, quotations for assets, for those who, for instance, would like to build structures, or those who are into sports and would like just to have proper setup where sports or whatever code can take place. Make sure that your projects involving fixed property have things like offer to purchase, architectural plans, proof of land ownership. And this applies to mostly people also who have applied for funding because they want to build orphanages. So make sure that if it is a structure, you have all this information available in your application. Now, this is the process. I told you that in terms of the regulations, okay, we do not just receive applications. An ideal situation for us would have been that. And maybe because we're servicing mostly NPOs and NGOs, and that there's been this fragmentation in the industry. There's no way where you people could come together and say, waiting for a year, look at what has happened, given the backlog we've had. The last call we had was closed in April 2030. There hasn't been any other call. We're in the process of opening a call for sports, and us will come later in the year because they still have a huge backlog, and the same applies, and it's not their fault. It's mainly because as the NLB, we went out and encouraged people to apply. So we're having this backlog because of the number of applications that we have. And it will not make sense for us to go out and have another call before we deal with the backlog. And it is moving. People are really working hard, working around the clock to make sure that they improve on that. But remember though, for miscellaneous, there's no call. You can apply any time of the year. Just make sure though that what you apply for is not anything that can be catered for in sports, in arts, or in charities. So we briefly, this is just the process map to indicate to you what we do at the National Lotteries Board, that we go out and call for applications, and we process those applications, make sure that the people sitting at the corner there that I told you about, a panel of adjudicators, can adjudicate over them. And from there, others get rejected, okay? Then others will be processed. So after the adjudicators have gone through your application, it will either be paid or it will be rejected. What I did not tell you as well is that there, where there's an application process, these things get separated. Those that are ready for funding are presented to the adjudicators. But even those that are declined in terms of the Act, it's only those people sitting at the corner. It's only the adjudicators who have the right to decline them and not us. So thereafter, we communicate with you. Now, people have been complaining lately that we're sending out, look, they're not using very nice words to describe these people who go and visit them, to do either verification or check whether what they said they were applying for has been implemented. When you sign the grant agreement, and because these are public funds, we have to go back and make sure that what you said you were applying for has been implemented. We have to audit that. Otherwise, the AG will throw us all out of the NLB, and there won't be any order. So please, because you are these honorable people who would be doing this wonderful work, make sure that you keep all the information together, be it your invoices or anything related to the project, because for the project to be closed, obviously, you will send a progress report, but our officials will come and check whether what you said you were applying for has been implemented. We do have challenges, though, and it's on the high rate of decline. We will be going out once more on a process of just educating people. And throughout the years, I think the NLB officials know exactly what the challenges are with those people whose projects cannot be funded. Also, it is about being unreasonable. We do receive projects where a person wants to build a whole village. A whole village. They submit an application for 500 million rands. Now, I've told you what the objective of this fund is. So if you are into poverty alleviation, and one person would like to apply for 500 million, it means that we must close shop. That's the whole budget for one of the sectors. So be reasonable as well in terms of what you want to apply for and what you want to achieve. These people who are adjudicating your projects and assessing them are quite skilled people. So there are things that you look at and see that, you know, this will take a century to complete. And is that the objective of the fund? You know, whenever you want to get into a process of applying for funding, please remember the objective of the fund, that you would like to improve people's lives, that you support in the NLB because we are a catalyst for social upliftment, and that the high rate of declines are mainly a result of incomplete documentation, unacceptable financial statements, unregistered accountants and auditors, documents not in the name of the applicant, and applications failing outside the mandate of the DA. You know, they apply to a wrong sector. Like I said, you know, if there hasn't been a call and you have this brilliant idea to fund a dance or movement by older women somewhere, don't apply to the miscellaneous, because miscellaneous is going to say to you, you should have applied to charity sector. You know, there are issues on corporate governance that is not strong, because the application form requires you to give an idea of how you are going to be operating properly, what are your procurement processes. You have to do that because at the NLB, that's what we get audited on as well. And make sure that grant agreements are properly handled and signed, and that they have been read. So, you know, we also have a problem with incorrect, incomplete, or unsatisfactory progress reports. Let me just explain this part. At times, the distributing agency, those adjudicators, the people sitting at the corner, will decide that this is a big amount. There is that inclination to say, we can't give these people maybe 10 million rands at a go, okay? Let's divide this into 2 tranches. And if they do that, you are expected that after implementing the first phase, that will go into the grant agreement. After implementing the first phase, please make sure that you compile your progress report and it is received. Unless you submit a progress report, the second tranche will not be released. So that's what is frustrating a lot of people. We do not know whether it's due to the fact that they do not have full knowledge of what happens. The person will, you know, get the first tranche and just sit back and not come back for the second tranche. And it's mainly due to that part of progress reports that are incomplete or that are not submitted. Improper record keeping when implementing the grant, delays in submitting additional information requested, failure to give NLDTF adequate recognition. We're very strict on that. We're very strict on that. You know, we fund some big projects. We fund some big projects and would like to see to have something that is visible, that indicates that this project was funded by the National Lotteries Board or NLDTF. We go around and we realize that in this big building that we would have constructed, you know, this thing is hidden somewhere next to the parking lot. You can't even get to see who funded the building. We're strict on that, and we have our people going out to make sure that when we fund you, we agree on the publicity issue as well. Unauthorized consultants, we've had a lot of creative people who go around deceiving others, telling them that they can apply on their behalf, or they're the ones who are experts who know Mampane, and they can get to Mampane's office and you'll get funding. Mampane has no influence in these processes. I showed you that there are adjudicators. So don't allow anybody to tell you that they are consultants. We leave our information here. It is in the pack as well. Contact us directly if you need help. Don't be shy. I said to you, we've signed an MOU with many other organizations. If we cannot reach you or cannot come to you to help you, we'll definitely send somebody who's close by to go and help you. But don't allow anybody to come to you and say he's a consultant, because when other people apply for funding, you see, especially with the partnership arrangement that we have, an organization that is assisting you is allowed to be given 10%, which they will say is for mentoring, is for supporting you, is for doing many other things. Well, in the nature of this industry, it would have been about how the assisted organization wouldn't have had all the mandatory documents and necessarily went to an assisting organization. You know, in our organization, we call that a mother and child relationship. Don't allow anybody to mother you who's going to exploit you. And hence, issues around the MOU and the likes have to be done properly. So, don't allow people to come to you and say, I can help you with your project, and this is the amount you will have to pay me. We've recently been dealing with terrible issues whereby people would have opened a special office for that. So you will go to them for them to assist you. And somewhere in the application where you put in information of the people who are assisting you and their banking details, before you leave where these consultants are working, they make sure that you give them banking details as well, so that when you receive your money, or money can go directly into their bank accounts. So please be vigilant. Talk to us about the challenges you have. Don't worry about if you don't have financial statements and many other things that we have mentioned here, but you have to access funding. Please talk to us. Let's advise you on how it is done so that you do it properly. Now, I told you that we have new legislation, but as this legislation was being crafted, the NLB was forward-looking. We were trying to reorganize how we can do things. We don't derive pleasure out of working around and seeing a lot of challenges in many communities when we know that there's a fund which can help people to actually make a difference in those communities. So in terms of the new funding model, we would like to respond to challenges of poverty, alleviation, and addressing inequalities in our society. We would like to demonstrate the relevance of NLDTF funding to develop practical and effective solutions to address these challenges. So the two modes of funding will be the application-based one, which I told you about, which has been there for the past 15 years. But we are going to have proactive funding, where we'll be able to identify areas where funding is required and can help those people. In the new Act, there's a whole prescription on how that should be done, that we should conduct research and thereafter make sure that we have proper policies in order to control issues that are associated with abuse of the funds. And for the application-based ones, there'll be a single call for applications or more than one call with targeted focus. And when we say targeted focus, I'm just citing an example, not that we are going to be having a call soon for that, but that was muted a while ago. That when you look at what is happening with schools and children who drown in those terrible places, whose names I will not mention, whether we don't want to go out on a call and say we are just supporting those schools that do not have proper ablution facilities. You understand? So it's just an example of a targeted call. Or back to the ECD story that I told you about, maybe upon conducting research, we could identify areas that are still lacking and would target those areas only. So that's how we would be operating from now moving forward. And the proactive funding will help achieve strategic objectives of the NLB. We have this prescription, like I indicated, that we have to allocate 5% of the funding. 5% though comes from the 4 sectors. Comes from charities, sports and recreation, arts and culture, and miscellaneous. That has to be allocated to all the provinces. There'll be more complex and longer time frames. We're hoping that there'll be innovative projects that will have a greater impact. And we're also hoping that this should help us to respond to disasters. You know, we usually sit back when there are floods, when there are all these other natural disasters, and there's nothing we can do because our funding is application-based. So the new legislation and the funding policy will just help us to relax issues that have been difficult for us to deal with. I'm about to conclude. Nicholas, you should have given me time. Me and microphone are friends. So for differentiated grants, we'll introduce different categories of grants. There will be small grants, there will be medium grants, and there will be large grants. At the moment, what happens is that whether you apply for 500 million, or you apply for 50,000, or you apply for 500 rands, we just weigh you into one pot, okay, and get that to be adjudicated. But we're going to be simplifying the process so that those who want 5 billion, the applications can be put aside and be processed. And for those who have emergencies and are reasonable with the requests, that can be attended to speedily. There will be different requirements for categories of grants, and we'll have also a clear framework for the multiple year funding, capping the amount of grants in order to have a wider spread. Our charities sector does that quite well. It's the sector that gets 45%. That 45% translates into close to 900 million or 1 billion rands per annum. But what they do is there's a cap to what they allocate. They don't allocate more than 2 million rands. So that's the fund that has been very, very effective, where we can really see the impact. So we will be doing further work to look at what capping does and whether it helps, so that we can be able to respond to the needs of as many people as we can. The NLB will also work with recognized intermediaries, and we will talk to you about this at our Indaba. I'm not going to tell you this because this is Nicola's show. I will not tell you about the intermediaries and who those are, and maybe it could be an opportunity for you as well. There will also be umbrella mother bodies, which will be restricted to a single coherent project with a single objective of local sites managed by them. We'll look at exclusive bank accounts that will be monitored and audited, and there'll be partnership applications to assist newer and less established organizations, which will be capped amounts and restricted number of partners. And I can't believe that that's the end of my story. But then before I hand over the microphone to the people who invited me, let me leave you just with these concluding remarks. That the tagline of this conference is helping to build strong and sustainable NPOs by going back to basics. That sums it up nicely. Just like the saying, if you take care of cents, the rents will take care of themselves. I've illustrated how some of the applications that come to the NLB are declined because the basics have not been adhered to. Your housekeeping is important. Those who have worked in companies that have gone through external audits will know how important it is to have your ducks in a row when the bin counters arrive at your doorstep. It is one exercise that will ensure that you keep records and store them well, comply to legislation, and learn from previous mistakes. This conference is hosted by the Accounting Academy. Take time to talk to them and get advice. I would encourage NPOs to treat themselves like serious business. Remember, just because the work you do may tug at heartstrings and is not for profit, it is no reason not to behave like a business. You are a business, am I right? Your bottom line is simply different than the corporate giants. At the NLB, we aim to develop our beneficiaries beyond dependency to a point where they can grow their projects and access other type of funding. I urge you to attend conferences like this one, build new skills, learn how to raise funds creatively. Now, I'm not saying learn to manipulate, please. The law will get you there. But find new ways to build support for your causes. For instance, look at the way that the world is going. People support initiatives that speak to their own values. If you can hone in on that, you will create a committed support base. Get savvy with the internet and social media. I indicated that that's the way you can keep in touch with us or with developments at the NLB. I know it is scary for some of us, but there is a wealth of resources on the internet that can assist you to navigate this. Social media is the most powerful catalyst of word of mouth since word of mouth. If you are doing good work, share it with the world, and you will find support coming to you from unexpected quarters. Lastly, I'd encourage you to look internally to your values, and when you recruit staff, hire those who are aligned to those values. Your staff will be your face and voice, and they need to believe in what you are doing. So, indeed, go back to the basics, and the rest is unlikely to deter you from your goal. Thank you for listening to me. And my last request, please, if you have to ask me questions, don't ask me difficult ones. I have a tendency of crying when I'm asked difficult questions. Thank you.